So if you go to the store today and you pick up a perfectly uniform, vibrant red tomato, you are essentially holding an engineering miracle.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But, you're also holding a product that owes its very existence to, well, extreme industrial heat, fossil fuels, and a completely altered local ecosystem.
Yeah, that's the part people don't usually see.
Exactly. I mean, we are so used to just walking into a grocery store and seeing these endless piles of affordable produce. We almost never stop to think about the sheer scale of the invisible machinery required to make that one tomato exist, let alone the billions of others just like it.
It is a profound disconnect, honestly. I mean, we look at a farm, maybe we see a red barn, some green fields, a tractor, and we read that as nature.
Right, the classic picture book farm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But modern agriculture, what we call conventional farming, it operates much more like an open-air factory. It's an incredibly highly tuned system designed with two overwhelming priorities, which are maximizing crop yields and maximizing production efficiency.
So it's all about volume and speed. Essentially, yes. To keep global food affordable for 8 billion people, the system has effectively decoupled itself from natural biological cycles. It's replaced them with, synthetic mechanical interventions.
And that decoupling, that is the core of our deep dive today, because we really want to pull back the curtain on this machinery.
It's fascinating when you really get into it.
It totally is, because when you start to look closely at the blueprint of a modern farm, you realize that the affordable food we rely on, it demands this constant, intense renegotiation with the earth. The high-yield crop varieties we plant today aren't just naturally abundant.
Right. They are biologically engineered to demand massive, continuous inputs.
Yes, and those inputs define the entire operation, don't they?
Oh, entirely. We're talking about vast applications of synthetic fertilizers just to force growth. Then you have chemical herbicides to eradicate any competing plants, pesticides to kill insects, and intensive irrigation systems.
It's like the farm is treated as just a blank slate. That's a great way to put it. It's a physical substrate where you just combine high-yield seeds with synthetic chemistry and heavy mechanization to, well, force an output.
I mean, I always pictured a farm as a place where you're working in partnership with the dirt, But from the sources we're looking at, it sounds more like the dirt is just a medium to hold the plant upright while the chemicals do all the actual work.
And that is actually the central vulnerability of the entire global food system. We treat the soil like an inert sponge.
But it's not.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Healthy soil is a fiercely complex living ecosystem. It is the absolute foundation of any sustainable agriculture. The problem is that the practice is driving conventional farming, specifically continuous monocropping and intensive tillage. They are fundamentally hostile to that underground ecosystem.
Okay, let's visualize that because I think most people, myself included, imagine tillage as a good thing.
Sure, it looks productive.
Right. You see a tractor dragging those massive steel discs through the field, churning up the earth, and it looks like they're just, fluffing up the soil, making it nice and soft for the new roots to grow.
Well, fluffing it up is the aesthetic result, but biologically, it is a catastrophic event.
Catastrophic, really?
Oh, absolutely. Think of healthy, undisturbed soil as a massive underground subway system built by microscopic fungi.
Okay, a fungal subway. I like that.
Right. And these fungal networks, along with billions of bacteria, they create the structural integrity of the soil, they build tiny air pockets for water to infiltrate, and they physically transport nutrients directly to the plant roots.
No. So they're doing the heavy lifting.
Exactly. So when a tractor heavily tills a field, it isn't just stirring the dirt. It is driving a bulldozer through those subway tunnels.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, slices those fungal networks to pieces, collapses the air pockets, and just completely destroys the soil's natural architecture.
And then, on top of destroying the physical structure, we have the monocropping aspect, like planting 10,000 acres of nothing but corn year after year.
Yes, the continuous monocropping.
If the soil microbes are the passengers on that underground subway, planting a monoculture seems like, I don't know, feeding them nothing but plain oatmeal for a decade.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, actually, because soil microbes thrive on diversity. Different plant roots exude different types of sugars and compounds into the soil.
So they need a varied diet.
Exactly. When you plant a single crop over extensive areas repeatedly, you are literally starving out any microbe that doesn't survive on that specific plant's specific chemical output. So the microbial diversity just plummets.
So we are left with dirt that has no structural integrity because we tilled it to death, and no biological life because we starved the microbes.
Pretty much.
I assume this is where the system becomes completely dependent on those external inputs you mentioned. Like, if the soil loses its natural ability to feed itself, it basically becomes a patient on life support,
That's a perfect analogy.
requiring like a constant IV drip of synthetic fertilizers just to keep the plants functioning.
Precisely. The farm loses its biological capacity to generate fertility. Without the fungal networks to source nutrients, and without the soil structure to retain moisture, maintaining productivity becomes a purely chemical equation.
Right, you have to do the math yourself.
Yeah, you have to step in and artificially provide the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that a healthy soil ecosystem would normally just cycle naturally.
Which sets off a massive chain reaction, right? Because the soil is now acting more like a slick, compacted paved road rather than a healthy, porous sponge. So those artificial chemicals have nowhere to go but out.
Yep.
The moment a heavy rain hits, the farm's highly localized chemical problem instantly becomes the entire region's water problem.
The spillover effect.
Yeah.
Water is the ultimate transporter. When you apply synthetic fertilizers to degraded, compacted soil, the plants physically cannot absorb all those nutrients fast enough.
So the excess just sits there.
It sits right on the surface, and during rainfall, that excess nitrogen and phosphorus runs right off the fields and drains into nearby rivers, lakes, and groundwater systems.
And the mechanism of what happens next in the water is fascinating because it's not that the fertilizer is necessarily toxic in the way we usually think of poison.
Right, it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. It does exactly what it was manufactured to do. It causes massive, explosive plant growth. It just does it to the wrong plants.
Eutrophication, that's the scientific term for it. When agricultural runoff hits a lake, it hyperfeeds the algae. You get these massive, unnatural algal blooms that just cover the entire surface of the water, blocking out sunlight for any aquatic plants below.
Which sounds bad enough, but the real devastation happens when that algae dies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's the decomposition that actually kills the lake.
Right. The bacteria that break down the dead algae consume massive amounts of oxygen in the water.
They strip the aquatic ecosystem of dissolved oxygen entirely. They create what we call dead zones,
Dead zones, where everything just dies.
where fish and other wildlife simply suffocate. It radically alters the nutrient balance and destroys habitats on a massive scale.
But let me look at this from the farmer's perspective for a second. Farmers are running incredibly tight, low-margin businesses.
These are thin margins usually.
Yeah, and synthetic fertilizer is expensive. Why on earth would a farmer intentionally apply so much fertilizer that it just washes away into a river? Surely there is a massive financial incentive to stop your expensive inputs from literally floating down the stream.
You'd think so, but the margin for error is razor thin, and the timing is just incredibly difficult to manage. A crop like corn, for example, needs a massive spike in nitrogen during a very specific window of its growth cycle.
Yeah.
If the farmer applies it too early, a rainstorm washes it away. If they wait too long, they miss the growth window and lose their yield entirely.
So they're trapped.
Exactly. For decades, the logical business decision was to over-apply, to put down an insurance policy of extra fertilizer just to guarantee the crop got what it needed. They basically accepted the runoff as a cost of doing business.
So it was an economic safety net that became a massive environmental liability.
Right. But the industry recognizes this inefficiency now. This is exactly why there is a huge push toward precision agriculture.
Like using tech to fix the leak.
Exactly. We are seeing a shift away from those blanket applications toward using GPS-guided tractors, soil sensors, and even satellite imagery.
Oh, wow. Satellites.
Yeah. The goal is to apply fertilizer in the exact right amount, down to the square meter, precisely when the plant is ready to absorb it. It aligns the financial incentive to save money with the environmental imperative to protect the watershed.
That makes total sense, tightening the efficiency of the assembly line to prevent leaks. But chemicals altering the water are really only half of the environmental spillover, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Because the sheer physical geography of conventional farming creates a totally different kind of crisis. When you drive past a modern farm and see miles and miles of a single plant, you aren't just looking at a monoculture, you are looking at a vast ecological desert.
We really have to consider how this physical layout simplifies the broader ecosystem. We aren't just talking about the microscopic life in the soil anymore. We are talking about the complete eradication of habitat for insects, birds, and wildlife.
Because when you plant 10,000 acres of identical wheat, you are wiping out the hedgerows, the native grasses, the diverse flowering plants. You're completely removing the food source for pollinators like bees.
Yes, the system becomes incredibly sterile.
Hey, let me play devil's advocate here. Let's look at the pest dynamic. If the goal is to grow human food efficiently without bugs eating it, isn't a sterile field kind of the point? Why does a farmer care if the ecosystem is simplified if it keeps pests away?
Because the irony is that a simplified ecosystem actually invites pests.
Wait, really? How?
In a diverse, healthy environment, you have built-in security. You have a complex web of predator and prey. Ladybugs, parasitic wasps, certain beetles. These are beneficial insects that actively hunt and eat the pests that destroy crops.
Oh, so they provide a massive free service to the farm.
They are essentially unpaid agricultural labor.
Unpaid agricultural labor. I love that.
Exactly. But when you create a monoculture, you bulldoze their homes. You remove the diverse plants they need to survive when the primary crop isn't in season.
So you fire your own security team.
Yes. When you evict your natural security guards, the pest populations, which, by the way, love to gorge on an endless buffet of a single crop, they just explode without any natural checks and balances.
So by trying to create a sterile, hyper-efficient environment, we actually make the crops infinitely more vulnerable.
Correct.
And because the unpaid labor is gone, the farmer is forced to buy expensive chemical pesticides to do the job the ecosystem used to do for free.
Which triggers what we call the pesticide treadmill.
The pesticide treadmill.
Yeah, you spray a field and it kills, say, 99% of the pests. But that 1% that survive, they are naturally resistant to that chemical.
Oh, I see where this is going.
They reproduce, passing on that resistance. Now you have a population of superpests. And remember, you've already killed off all their natural predators with the first spray.
Right. The ladybugs are long gone.
Exactly. So the next season, you have to apply an even stronger pesticide in greater quantities, further degrading the surrounding environment and just continuing this relentless cycle of chemical dependency.
It is a staggering cascade of interventions. Like, we broke the soil's natural fungal subway system, so we have to manufacture synthetic fertilizers. We compacted the earth, so we have to build complex irrigation to force water in and deal with the runoff when it pours out. We evicted the beneficial insects, so we have to manufacture synthetic pesticides.
It's intervention after intervention.
Which brings me to the absolute elephant in the room: the energy required to power all of these artificial replacements.
The climate footprint of conventional agriculture is immense, and it extends far, far beyond the diesel fuel burned by tractors and combine harvesters. The true energy cost is hidden in the supply chain, specifically in the manufacturing of the synthetic inputs themselves.
This is a mechanism that completely blew my mind when I was looking at the research for this deep dive. Because, okay, plants need nitrogen to grow. It is the fundamental building block for their DNA and proteins.
Right. Non-negotiable for plant life.
And the cruel joke of nature is that we are literally swimming in an ocean of nitrogen. I mean, the Earth's atmosphere is 78% nitrogen gas.
But plants can't use it.
Exactly. They can't use it.
Atmospheric nitrogen is a molecule composed of two nitrogen atoms locked together by a remarkably strong triple bond. Plants just do not have the biological machinery to break that bond.
So how does it happen in nature?
In nature, certain specialized soil bacteria pull it from the air and convert it into a usable form for the plant. But, as we discussed earlier, conventional farming practices heavily diminish those biological pathways.
Right, we starve the bacteria with our monocrop oatmeal.
Exactly, so we had to figure out how to do it ourselves industrially. We'd essentially replace the microscopic soil bacteria with massive, distant chemical plants.
The Haber-Bosch process.
Yes, the Haber-Bosch process. To break that triple bond and literally pull nitrogen out of the sky to make synthetic fertilizer, we subject natural gas and atmospheric air to extreme heat and crushing pressure.
Which sounds intense.
It is one of the most energy-intensive industrial processes on the entire planet. Producing the fertilizer required to sustain modern agricultural yields consumes an estimated 1 to 2% of the world's entire energy supply.
Wait, 1 to 2% of global energy? Just for fertilizer?
Just for fertilizer.
That is insane. I mean, think about that. Before a single pellet of fertilizer even touches the soil, before it has the chance to run off into a river, it has already burned massive amounts of fossil fuels just to exist.
It's a huge carbon cost up front.
So when you buy that uniform tomato, you aren't just paying for the water and the dirt, you are paying for the immense industrial heat used to rip nitrogen molecules out of the sky halfway across the world.
The farm is not an isolated piece of land. It is merely the biological endpoint of a staggering global carbon-heavy supply chain. When you compound the emissions from fertilizer production with the fuel used for transport, the energy to pump intensive irrigation, and the carbon released from the soil itself during heavy tillage,
It's overwhelming.
conventional agriculture represents a massive sector of global greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, we have outlined an incredibly precarious machine here. The soil is depleted, the water is choking on runoff, the natural biodiversity has been replaced by a chemical treadmill, and the whole thing is running on an unsustainable burn of fossil fuels.
It sounds bleak when you lay it all out like that.
It does. But if we just stopped doing these things entirely, global crop yields would crash and we wouldn't be able to feed billions of people. So how do farmers fix this without just, I don't know, abandoning their equipment and returning to 19th century subsistence farming?
Well, the way forward isn't about abandoning technology at all. It is about leveraging it to mimic and support natural biological systems rather than chemically overriding them. The agricultural sector is actually actively undergoing a massive transition right now toward climate-smart farming strategies. It's an evolution.
Let's explore the mechanics of those solutions then. If the foundational problem is naked, heavily tilled soil, how are modern farms reversing that damage at scale?
By fundamentally changing how they treat the ground when the primary crop isn't growing. The most impactful shifts we're seeing are the adoption of reduced tillage and cover cropping.
So, skipping the bulldozer.
Exactly. Instead of driving that bulldozer through the fungal subway system, farmers are using highly specialized equipment to drill seeds directly into unplowed ground. This preserves the soil architecture and keeps the carbon locked in the earth.
And the cover cropping, is that acting as the food supply for the microbes?
Precisely. It is the exact opposite of the monoculture starvation diet. Between harvest and the next planting season, instead of leaving the field as bare dirt, farmers plant specific crops like clovers or radishes.
But they don't sell those, right?
No, the goal isn't to harvest them for cash. The goal is to keep a living root in the ground year-round. This constantly feeds the soil microbiome with diverse sugars. It prevents the topsoil from blowing away in the wind. And it acts as a natural sponge to increase water retention and stop all that runoff.
So you're basically keeping the biological engine idling rather than shutting it completely down and trying to cold start it with chemicals every spring.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it. And we are seeing similar holistic approaches to the biodiversity and pest problem through something called integrated pest management, or IPM.
How does that work?
Rather than a blanket chemical assault, IPM relies heavily on biological data.
So instead of just spraying a field on a strict schedule, a farmer is monitoring pest life cycles, understanding the local ecology, and trying to rebuild habitats to bring the unpaid labor, the beneficial insects, back into the fold.
Exactly. They are planting buffer strips of native wildflowers along the edges of massive fields, specifically to house pollinators and predatory insects. They use targeted, highly specific interventions only when a pest population reaches an economic threshold, rather than spraying preemptively.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
It is about restoring the ecological checks and balances and using chemical pesticides strictly as a last resort rather than a first line of defense.
You know, it seems the overarching theme of this evolution is humility. Like, we spent the last century using brute force chemistry and heavy machinery to bend the natural world to our absolute will, just chasing nothing but maximum yield.
Chasing the highest number possible.
Right. But now we are using highly advanced technology, satellite mapping, data modeling, precision sensors to figure out how to respectfully integrate with the biological systems that were already there.
And that is the ultimate goal of sustainable agriculture. To maintain the incredible yields that prevent global famine, while regenerating the resources required to produce them in the first place. But the responsibility doesn't just fall on the farmer.
Who else does it fall on?
It requires massive investment from researchers building better tools, policymakers incentivizing conservation over sheer volume, and consumers actually recognizing the value of these shifts.
It is a profound dual reality. On one side, the conventional farming system is a triumph of human ingenuity that sustains billions of human lives and keeps our society functioning. But it demands a rigorous, unflinching look at what we are asking the earth to sacrifice in return.
The current model is a massive ecological debt, and we are just beginning to realize we actually have to pay it back.
We have to view food not just as a commodity, but as an ecological event. Every bite connects us directly to the soil health, the water quality, the insect populations, and the climate.
Absolutely.
Which brings us back to the grocery store. The next time you are standing in the produce aisle and you pick up that perfectly uniform, vibrant, affordable vegetable, take a moment to look past the surface. Think about the massive, invisible machinery that brought it to your hands.
Think about the supply chain.
Yeah, think about the industrial heat required to force nitrogen into the dirt, the altered fungal networks beneath the surface, and the missing pollinators. And ask yourself, if the true cost of that vegetable included the preservation of local water systems and the long-term health of the soil it was grown in, how might the farms of tomorrow need to operate to ensure that shelf stays full, not just for us, but for generations to come?
That is the exact conversation we all need to be having to secure the future of our food.
Totally agree. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember to make mindful choices about the food you eat. We'll catch you next time.